What's happening, guys? I hope you had another good week. It really heated up last week. It really heated up towards Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Obviously, it started with Fran, F-R-A-N. We talked about it, went over that trade recap. And I plan to do a little bit more this week with a trade recap of sorts, just to kind of go through the thought process, the big why. The reason why I thought that it could do what it did, the reason why I thought 14 to 18 for sure, and then potentially what it may do this week. Obviously, we'll discuss it in the room tomorrow, but I'm going to get into it a little bit tonight on the Sunday night scan. However, this thing was wild, and it was a really big opportunity. We don't have these types of opportunities often, so it's nice to be able to get a good piece of it. So that was a good way for Wednesday, the dip, Thursday to basically risk off that 1350 level mental, meaning not a hard stop, and then all dips on Friday, where it obviously had that nice secondary squeeze, and that was pretty much expected. Those of you guys that follow on Twitter saw those comments earlier in the week, thinking that Thursday, Friday would be the secondary move when the not necessarily the buy-ins, but I'm thinking that might be later on this week, or midweek anyway. But once that kind of stuff starts to kind of build up and start to compound, that's when we get these really big moves. So I was fortunate to be part of that. We need to talk about Traders for a Cause real quick. We are inside of a month now, so it's almost about 4 weeks from today. It's October 11th to the 13th. We have a crazy list of speakers this year. A lot of different guys and ladies that some of which I've never even heard of. However, people rave about them. So it's going to be interesting even for me to kind of hear from different people, because at the end of the day, you should never stop learning, and you don't realize what you can take from different people, from different types of trades. Some people that do futures, some people that do options, things like that. Even when we do these Lucci meets, me and saying Lucci, you think you're going to be talking about trading the entire time, but you're not. You're actually talking about life, psychological types of roadblocks you're going to go through, how to get through that. And I think it's a lot of the stuff that you don't realize that you need to know that is actually going to be able to take you to the next level. Everybody always focuses on sizing up, scaling up, profit and loss, and all these different things. But the reality is you need to fix it from the process up. You have to have that strong foundation, and the better that you fine tune what's underneath, the better you're going to perform at the top. So it's a continual refinement of that foundation and making it stronger and stronger, the process, and continuing to ideally make more with less stress. And as long as you can kind of keep that balance, then that's the name of the game. So again, October 11th to the 13th. Also, the week before that, we have John Najarians and Pete Najarians. They're putting on a conference this year as well, which I will do a separate video for. But they've got a great lineup as well, so that's going to be an exciting one too. So again, Traders for a Cause, October 11th to the 13th. If you haven't signed up yet, just DM me, Twitter, Instagram, or do a comment at the bottom, and I can send you over a link with a discount code. And last but not least, right after Traders for a Cause too, sometimes people think that it's just going to be Saturday, Sunday, and leave in the morning, and that's it. But we actually roll through till about halfway through the day. Usually we finish up around 1 p.m. on Sunday. So, when you're booking flights, make sure you don't book to just get right out. I'm leaving on Monday. So, at 2 p.m. on that Sunday, after Traders for a Cause is done, I'm going to be doing another Lucci Meets with Sang, and it's just been getting better and better and better. So I think he's heading out to LA in a week or something like that, but this one I'm definitely going to be doing, but I'm not taking 3 trips back and forth to the West Coast. So anyway, let's get into scan. Again, I'm going to go over the Fran trade, some of the stuff with SINT. We just had a really, really good week last week as far as being there, anticipating trends. And what I want to do is show you guys a little bit of the chat logs from last week as well. So my goal, and maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's by midweek, but my goal is to do a couple trade recaps so that you can kind of see exactly how we go about doing it in the Investors Underground chat room. It's not, we're not a buy now, sell now type service. We're there's a lot of veteran traders in there. And it's really all focused towards providing the best quality, actionable alerts. And what that means to me is that if you have any idea of what you're doing, you're going to find value in the posts that are within the room. And if you are learning and you're just starting out, obviously we have the whole educational arm as well. So let's dive into it. First and foremost, you always have to remember that it's a new week. It's a new day. Just because Fran, F-R-A-N, on Wednesday was one of my biggest trades of the year, does not mean I come in, walking like I own the place on Thursday, because guess what? I'm going to have to sell the place on Thursday if I act that way. So, Thursday I refocused and made sure that I wasn't just getting too aggressive out of the gate just because I had a huge buffer from the day before. Same thing on Friday. Friday was great. So that means coming in Monday, you act like you've been there before. The more excited you get, the more the more that it impacts you, the more it's going to influence your next trade, and that's always never a good thing. So just make sure that when you do start on your first trade on Monday, you are zoned in. You're taking the trade because this is what you prepared for. So A+ is the name of the game. So focus, and let's get into it. So obviously Fran was a really nice opportunity on Friday. And I pretty much the concept, the idea in the room was basically on Thursday, all dips versus 1350s. Now it dipped under a little bit here and there, but again, it's not a hard stop. And then number two, it had an insider buy after hours. So right away, antenna goes up and like, ooh, another great piece of positive. Not necessarily that it was a huge buy. I think it was 5,000 shares, but it's just another reason why this thing might not dip on shorts timetable, right? It's going to end up unwinding at some point, but the point here is that it's just not going to be on their timetable, and then that's when you have the opportunity. So the other thing to think about with this Fran is that the more people that think it's going to be going and it's going to go to 20 and 25 and 30 and 30, as soon as people start buying for that parabolic move, they start buying for the squeeze. When their thesis starts to become breakout for squeeze, that's when we're going to start to top. So keep that in mind. If everybody that you talk to is buying it because they think it's going to 30, maybe it's time to get up. So just keep that in mind. I would say even leading up into Friday afternoon, everybody that had asked me about it, talking about it, their idea was looking for the fade. Don't you think it should come back? Don't you think it should pull back? Don't you think it's up too much? And as soon as that shifting, that change happens, and where everybody starts asking me, hey, do you think this thing could go to 40, 50? What do you think? That's the sign to get out. So just keep that in mind. But for now, all dips, pullbacks are healthy, in my opinion. I think that the piece that most people don't think about on situations like this is, most traders are, or at least most shorts, right? They're trapped from 8 and then it went to 11, right? And then so whether they blew out or not, who knows? Maybe they got back in there. Now they're trapped at 11. It rips up, and say they did perfect, and they made it through that squeeze, and they added at 17, maybe 16. Now their new average is 13. It comes almost back to that level, but it doesn't. And then it rips again. So they aren't letting shorts out. And as most of you guys know, normally when you're short something and you lose on it, right, you want to get your money back. And so if it starts to work, and in this case, it starts to pull back and coming back, you got a big padding, right? Maybe you had taken the loss and now you're up $3-4, and then all of a sudden, bam, 1 hour into Friday, and your $4 is gone. So the key here is, or the thing to understand is, just because it's down $1.50 does not mean that it's bearish. You got to kind of think about that, because even if it pulled back $1 or $2, shorts are still not break even. Shorts are still not going to be able to get out. So that's the thought process there. Keep in mind, yes, insider buy, yes, 44% short float, yes, easy to borrow, and there wasn't that many probably buy-ins yet. So maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is going to be the forced covers, especially if there's a lot of failure to delivers. So we'll see what happens. Cautiously optimistic again, but again, if it's strong, it gaps up, and it's not dipping, and it's just steady, I'm gonna get nervous, and I'm not gonna like it as much as I did. But for now, as long as, say, it pulls back and it holds 1680 17s, somewhere around there, 1650 17s, I'm interested. So we'll see what happens. But fantastic trade on Friday as well, just joining dips and whatnot, and again, selling rips, selling when everybody wants it, because if you're overloading it, then you're going to get nervous over here. And I actually bought into this flush, and had I overloaded it and had I not been selling into the 19s, I wouldn't have bought here. And buying here, you also need to be okay with the next swipe down, right? The next flush down. And if you're overloaded too much, then you're not going to be able to let that work. So again, be cautious every day that this actually holds up, but we'll see what happens. Overstock, craziest pump of them all. This is almost like an orchestrated type of squeeze. It's been an amazing rip. The only way that I haven't even really looked into how they're going to do this. But the only way that I could see this working is if they had like a new symbol that everybody gets as a dividend that owns or holds the coins for their digital security. Because there's no way that they can divvy out a digital coin to everybody. And the whole thing is, like, if they're short, then how are the shorts going to deliver this digital coin? Then they'll probably have to go and buy the coin, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is very complicated, and if there isn't an answer, then FINRA and the SEC, well, mostly FINRA, they'll just halt it if they can't figure it out, if it comes down to it, right? Or they'll extend the dividend date out. So, if you're buying and you're believing into this story, then just be super, super cautious. This is 100% orchestrated, and with the intent to squeeze shorts. So they've done a really, really great job. Both times we've had some really great opportunities. The first one was off the earnings, and it flushed and clearly covered far too early. But it still offered a fantastic opportunity. Same thing this day. And then it looked like death, and then all of a sudden it just went straight up. So the trade that we had on Friday, I posted on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. So hopefully you guys saw it. Again, I'm going to try to do a recap of it. But basically dabbled a little bit. The goal was gap up and basically parabolic, ideally towards 30. And in my head, I have to be okay with 32, right? Because if it starts going parabolic just like the day before, it went about $3 straight up. So once the sellers came in, and once I saw that kind of confirmed, there was a lot of offers that came in, and the bid shifted. That's when I scaled in, as I said in the room, and pretty much was short most of the day, trading this flush and then rescaling in versus VWAP level. They tried to save it. I think they got a little stuck. So this one for sure will be a watch. Higher the better. They love to pump this thing over the weekend, so hopefully it gets back up towards the 26s, something like that, and then I'll be looking for a fade. We'll see what happens, but again, you got to kind of like tiptoe into this one, because they are one step ahead. This isn't a naturally trading name. This is something that is basically, I would call it a trading vehicle. They know what they're doing. Their goal is to trap shorts and make them pay. So, and that's what they've done all along. And they also trap longs. They trap shorts and then they trap longs, and they keep on doing it over and over and over again. So great volume, great opportunities. Higher the better, potential unwind. And I just hope that there's no restrictions on borrows or anything like that. Sometimes it gets prohibited, but most of the time it's been pretty easy to borrow. So MTSL, one shot, one kill on Friday. They kind of walked it up, and then a buyer came in, and we saw pre-market 250s as pretty much the top here. So when you see that happen, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to hold, right? And so if you go back through the chat logs on Monday morning, I said 250, huge stuff, obvious seller. But the more times that it tests, it does not necessarily mean that you just short there every time. If you short there every time, one of these times you're going to get popped. And not necessarily on this one, but on a low float one, something like that, it's going to sneak up and it's going to get you. So with that said, what I like to do is assume that people are using that 250 as a backdrop. And then when they pull that offer at 250, everybody freaks out, right? Everybody panics because they were looking at it. They had their risk. They were all set because 250 was the top. It's not breaking. There's a huge seller there. And all of a sudden they lift up, and then they sell into all this panic. The panic comes through the 250s, and I think it hit where did it get up to? 266. So it went up about 15, almost 20 cents, and slam right back down. So all of that break of the 250, just by lifting the offer that they were selling unlimited amount of shares at, just by lifting that, caused all kinds of panic to come in, covers, because everybody was afraid it was going to go to 3. So that creates a liquidity event, and with that gave an opportunity. So as you saw, I had posted the chart, but shorted into that ramp and pretty much held it for most of the day. I made it to about 168 or so. So we'll see what happens with this. Higher the better on this. This is a known one where probably one guy comes in, buys it up, sells it off, and they did this before. Many times we've seen it. Over here, back here. So higher the better. This will be maybe off radar type trade where my goal is going to be 170s, 175, 180, something like that, and then just let it work while I'm trading other stuff. I don't think it's going to be a crazy active one, but I think it'll just be a steady bleed. NTech, higher the better. Now this one is a pretty nice move. I did not expect it to go as high as it did, but typically what I'd be looking for is a retest of these 133, 135s, somewhere around there, the 135 level, 130, and then fade off. In a perfect world, it'd go to 150. Higher the better. I'm not looking to fight it, but once it starts to break, I think it's going to probably fade back under $1. CPRX, this was a beautiful one. I actually got the high day, which was great. Ramped up to 716 here. And not that I put 716 in there. I put in like 705 or 706, but it was SSR. So somebody came in, swiped it up, and I got lifted off the offer. And then basically 710, 705, 702s was a short. And so I had a plan to fade this red. And I felt like the fact that they pulled the offering was not bullish. It was not like, hey, we're going higher because they pulled the offering. They were actually offering it at E-Trade, which to me means that they weren't finding much interest. So they went to try to get it done with a heavy retail book, and they still failed. And see what happens. But in my opinion, that's bearish. So at any rate, I was pretty confident with this trade, and given that I had a good nice 705, 702 type average. With a decent position, I wanted to scale. So I actually scaled in at the open. I actually scaled more and more, and I ended up probably like a 680 average, but with a lot of size and a pretty high degree of confidence type of trade, thinking that it was going to unwind. But had I just been a little bit more patient, I probably would have held it red, right? So what I did is I kind of added, and it almost went back up, and just like I said in the room, if this starts to base here and go, I'm going to have to size down. I'm going to have to be safe, even though, I think it's going to fade off. At that point, I had too much risk on. So anyway, I ended up snapping and it worked out perfectly. But I did take risk down a little bit just because this little blip made me rethink my trade. So, I could have re-added, but I would rather be safe than sorry. But I did end up riding it down most of the way to about this level over here. I think 618 was the best if I recall correctly. But at any rate, it's a reminder that just because you have a fantastic average does not mean you need to be drilling into the trade just because you have a strong bias and heavy conviction. Wait for the price action to kind of agree with you. I could have had a much better average, take on even more size, and probably would have made double or triple what I made had I just taken a little bit of a step back and didn't get so aggressive. So just a reminder to me. But the goal for tomorrow would be basically 630, 640s, kind of ramp up that level and then come back down. So see what happens there. CRK, unlikely I trade. If I do, it'll be small and it'll be a trend join and kind of put it on the right monitor while I'm trading other stuff. This is not something that I want to be aggressively looking at for a big trade. I want to be playing dips, go back to maybe this support level, 920, 930s. And then rally back red to green. Maybe we get a 10, 11 move type breakout here. So there's that. IMMU. This is a really nice breakout. Volume's good, and most importantly for me, the range is good. So I think there's going to be some great opportunities. I'd probably use 1650s as a guide for any trade that I make. So if it starts getting 1650 heavy, then I'd look to fade it. If it starts to base there and looks like it's going to break out, then by all means, I'll join that trade for a 17, 18 breakout. But really nice breakout the last couple days. I like big moves like this, but you just have to be cautious if you start to size into a winner and it starts to slowly stair step down. SINT, this one was kind of expected. But again, no matter how much I see in the tape, if the price action suggests I'm wrong, then that always trumps my own bias. So right now, it's proving what I said on Thursday correct. The fact that they soaked so much here at 225 and then also at 2 was really interesting to me. They did increase the ATM size, which I think a lot of people see as obviously a negative. And I think that they've trained shorts that every single time it comes back, so that's also good. But I find it interesting that they soaked so much on the way down. Now, whether or not that was a huge short and they were just covering a position, I'm not so sure that it was. I think it was somebody that was just buying back a good portion of what was sold. So at any rate, I was expecting it to kind of base at 2 on Friday. Kind of went over the game plan in the room. It's a quiet trade for me. I bought flushes on Thursday and on Friday, and it ended up coming back. So we had probably a little bit of covers into the close, but for the most part it held. So now what's important to me is to see if you guys remember the 225 buyer. That's going to tell me a lot. So if it starts to get heavy at 230, 225s, 220s, forget it. But if it holds, if we get a PR, anything like that, then this thing could easily be a really big move. So I took notes on Thursday based off of what I saw on the tape, and now it's up to it to prove. And I think it very well could be a potential fun trade, especially if there is a PR. RUHN, not run NH. I'll edit that. But maybe it's a slip. Maybe it means it's going to run. But this one, I feel like they did a great job with kind of showing its potential. It had huge move. A lot of shorts, I think, got bent up on this thing, especially this first day, and then probably squeezed out. But I think there's potential here. You can see that they're obviously basing it, but I don't think that they are pressed for time. Right, so right now there's a seller. You can see the VWAP kind of resistance and whatnot, but this is kind of like what Fran did the days after. It kind of just was like, whatever. You can chase it if you want, but it's going to come right back down. You can sell it at the bottom when it looks like it's trash, and then all of a sudden it's going to come right back up. But we're not in a rush. do what you want, and then you'll see. And I feel like that's what they're doing with this thing. So my bias is that there's potential here, but I need to be proven. This could be something that just fades off the radar and it's dead by Tuesday, Wednesday. Or if we keep on seeing the dips get bought up, I'm keeping this on radar, because this could be the next one that goes 8, 9, and then into the, maybe not the teens, but potentially 12, 13, I guess, maybe. But it is that type. They do have a lockup coming. So the immediate thought process that went through my head is, if you guys remember UXIN, when they started to churn up all that volume before the lockup came due, it was a pretty wild trade. I guess it was just this. But it reminded me of this, where everybody's like, no way, it's $1 billion market cap, it's too thick. But they did it, and they ran it into the lockup. So I immediately went there, just because it's good to have an imagination of what's possible, especially when volume comes in on these IPO type names. So that was something that I went back to. I remember trading UXIN, and it's also a reminder that, hey, when the lockup does happen, just make sure you're out, because it never ends well. So definitely a watch. Consolidation, watch for it to break out, and let's see what happens. JFIN, very thin name. Saw this hit up on Scan, and they were swiping. They were buying with 50-cent risk. 50-cent spreads, and then when there was dollar spreads, they were still swiping the offers. So to me, that's either somebody was stuck short and they're getting bought in, or they're covering, or they just want the stock. They're trying to get it at whatever cost it takes, because they're taking it higher. So I'm going to definitely watch this as a potential swing, as long as 15, ideally 16, but I think given the spreads and stuff, you got to be okay with 15. But if 16 starts to base and this thing doesn't pull back much, I'm definitely interested. So I'm going to be watching that. AAWW, huge call by one of our news guys in the room right here. It was 29.70. They lost Amazon, and it went to another stock that started with an A. I forget what it was off the top of my head, but great opportunity. And for me, just like if Citron hit something, or any of these other hit pieces, a lot of people get bent by just chasing, right? You chase it, and then it ramps all the way back, and then it squeezes red to green. And I think that the key is you got to take a step back, let these things start to prove to you that it's going to stay heavy. And that's exactly what happened. So I started to scale into that to some actual size, since my average was okay. I had a decent entry and then a couple of emotional ads, but still not sizing until we tested and were basically proven that there was a seller coming in. It is the type of news that I felt like a seller would come in and pretty much fade the rest of the day. So again, you can go back to the blog and check that out, the trade there. But fantastic trade. I got about $2 a share, I think, off of it. Left a little bit on the table, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. However, higher the better on Monday. And I'm going to be looking for this thing to potentially start to have some pressure over the next couple days. So let's see what happens with that. TTWO, not TDWO, that's the next one. TTOO, choppy. I'm going to let it do its thing, and then once everybody stops caring about it, I'll be looking to fade it. But right now, assume that 3 wants to consolidate. We can either go to 350 or probably a slow fade to 250. So if we do the 350, I think we'll have a lot of momentum. I think we could probably even go higher. I think a lot of people probably shorted it. It was just 50 cents. No matter what, we're going to have a big play. These are where the big plays come from. ENDP, MNKs, TTOO. Anytime that you look and it's like it was 50 cents, it almost gives you great conviction at 3. Short. It was just 50 cents. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's holding. And, you get that secondary move. So definitely a watch. Probably nothing I would trade off the open tomorrow. Same thing, MNK, ENDP. Trades, I like them. But, I want to stay familiar. And that's what it's about. Staying familiar with these trades. And being in the know of how they're setting up and seeing them. just because they're on scan tonight does not mean I'm going to trade them tomorrow. Usually I trade probably a quarter to 30% of what's on my scan, and then whatever else hits my scans that day live. But what I'm doing is training and remembering what these charts are setting up, so that when I do see them on scans, I'm like, hey, that was on scan the other day. I remember that. I need to get on that. So even though I only trade probably 30% of what I'm prepared for, I'm prepared the next day because of that, or the next day, or the next week when I see it. And that's why I can react so much faster to seeing some of this price action. So last couple is ARDX. This one I was treating like KPTI, like I had tweeted out. Basically wanted to fade it, and I did not take it overnight on the short, unfortunately. But I'd be looking for a push versus the 550s. Higher the better. Hopefully 550s and then unwind. And we'll see what happens there. So I don't want to get too heavily biased on this thing. But if 550s keeps on failing, I could see this pulling back to 450s or more. I think it's very retail heavy name, meaning everybody loaded up on the first news, and then I don't think a lot of people knew that they had another data thing coming, and I think that just everybody is retail heavy on this thing. So I'm looking for them to flush it out, and then potentially it'll start to grind up later on. If you look at KPTI, that was a similar situation where it was very retail heavy name. Everybody kind of was long it, and then it faded off, and it took, this is June, I guess July, August, September, almost probably about 2 whole months before it hit highs again, right? So that's what I'm comparing it to. In my head, I'm thinking, we might be in for consolidation around 450 to 5 for, a month or two before it starts to go for highs. TWOU, higher the better. Backside, I missed this opportunity. Nice little pullback. Not necessarily something I would have taken, but it was on radar. I was watching it, but now I'd be looking up, 1950s fail and look to fade it, and maybe just a little bit of a couple profit-taking days. It's literally been up since this pullback day. It was topped at 1420s a few times, and then it literally hasn't really had a bad day since. So at some point, we're going to have a $1, $2 correction. That's the day I want to be there. ADVM, huge move into the close. So to me, a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, it's up 20 cents, 30 cents, and it's not enough for them to short. But I remember from the day before, it was 530. So if it's 630, that means it was just a buck move really fast. I'd take that for 30, 40 cent pullback. And then that's last one is Real. So Real, not much going on right now, but staying familiar with the chart. The reason why I'm interested in it, looking left, right? So you can see this last time after it had the earnings, I think it was this day, came back up, hit 18s, and it just unwound like crazy, which we've seen. We've seen on FSLY as well as a bunch of other ones. But if you look left, you'll see it's starting to get into some serious resistance here. So if we touch that and it fails, we're coming back in hard probably. If not, and it starts to bust through, so a lot of times you might see it fail, and then rip right through that day. That's a nice day that might have a pretty big squeeze. We've seen that with FSLY, where it comes on these big levels, fails, and then finally when it gets through it, it goes nuts. So that's the kind of stuff that I look for. So again, Real is not something that I'm going to go nuts on out of the open, but I'm going to be prepared for it. And when and if it does go, I'll see it and I'll trade it. So that's it. That's the plan for tomorrow. Those are the charts that I'm interested in for this week so far. If you guys have any questions about Investors Underground, if you have any interest in finding out more, reach out, leave a comment below, email us, DM, whatever. And thank you again for watching the Sunday Night Scan, and thank you guys as always for any of the comments that you guys leave. I always appreciate those.